Hello everyone, this is Kriti extending a warm welcome to all of you. I'm a marketing executive at Upside Learning and your host for the webinar today. Thank you for taking the time to attend our webinar, 3 things to focus on for creating engaging multi-device e-learning. Before we get started, I would like to let you know that you will be receiving the recording of this webinar later through email. Feel free to ask any questions anytime using the chat facility. Now, for a quick introduction about Upside Learning. For almost 12 years now, we have been helping organizations of different sizes and types to improve performance through better learning. With our head office in India, we serve clients based in the UK, the US, Australia, Middle East, North Africa, Singapore, New Zealand, Thailand, and other countries. Our learning solutions include Bespoke e-learning services and Upside LMS, our best value SaaS learning management system. The tailor-made bespoke e-learning services range from responsive e-learning development to rapid e-learning, on-site ID resources to multi-device testing, Flash to HTML conversion to translation and localization, and more. We have been recognized and awarded time and again by renowned bodies like Learning Technologies, Brandon Hall, Training Industry, etc. These are some of our clients. Moving on to the webinar, it's my pleasure to introduce you to the speaker, Amit Garg, Director and Co-founder, Upside Learning. Amit, over to you.
Thank you, Kriti. And good morning, good afternoon, good evening, based on where you're joining us today from. Thank you very much for joining us. If you're not able to hear me, all right, just send us a message in the chat window. All right, so up front, maybe a question for you, and we don't have a poll on this because this could have been difficult, but if you do want to share your thoughts, it'll be great if you can share them in the chat window, which is on why is e-learning sometimes not so engaging. I'm sure you've all experienced e-learning, good and bad, but and if you've been creating e-learning, possibly you've thought over this, but from a learner's perspective, maybe why do you think e-learning has not been so engaging, at least sometimes, if not more often than not? If you could share your thoughts, great. We could then get started with what we have to say. All right, so as of now, I can understand it's slightly longish question. Polls are a little better for webinar formats. But we'll move on and we'll see, in our opinion, what can be really done about engaging e-learning. So first up, I think it's now abundantly clear that we're all living in a multi-device world. Whenever we've been doing sessions on multi-device e-learning, we've had an average of about 3 devices that everybody has been using now, which is clear indication that we are well and truly into the multi-device world. And also this is a world which is still evolving, as in you still have watches and glasses to come into the mix, especially into the learning domain. They're not yet there. But yes, this is a world that is definitely upon us, and it's only going to evolve from here and add more devices as we go along. So to the previous question, I did get one response from Robert. He says linear text with roots in PowerPoint. Absolutely. It is something that should not be done, especially when we're talking about adult learners. Our presentation is really focused more on corporate training scenarios, as in what can we do about engaging e-learning in the corporate situations, not so much in the academic one. But yes, if you just want to create very linear PPT styled presentations or e-learning, it will have a little difficulty, and possibly we have a particular point in addressing that concern as well. All right, moving on. Before we get into the core of our presentation today, there are a couple of points that I would like to highlight about the multi-device world itself. The first one is around the types of multi-device experiences that can be created. And this has been borrowed from Mika Levin's book on the same topic on designing multi-device experiences. And she talks of 3 types of multi-device experiences. The first one being consistent, which is something that you observe on most sites today, where the experience is pretty much similar on various devices, whether it is Google, Netflix, or any other. So this one is really not something that is new to you. I'm sure you've seen enough of this. Continuous is the one which you may have experienced but may have missed noticing that how the experience has been moving from one device to another. So continuous is when you're doing certain thing on one device and you can continue doing the same thing on another device or take it forward from there. Excuse me. Amazon Kindle, through its Whisper Sync technology, was a good example of such continuous experience. You could leave a book on one device at a particular point and begin from precisely the same point on another device. In fact, they took that experience a step further and also integrated audiobooks. So you could actually listen to some books, and wherever you leave the audio part, you can start reading it if you want on a different device or on the same device, whichever way you like it. So that's really the continuous experience. You could have in e-learning, you could have continuous experience where you have bookmarking and you can access courses on different devices. That would be considered continuous experience. The third type of experience that she talks of is complementary, which is essentially bringing in more than one device together to create a unique experience which wasn't possible with any of those individual devices. So here's a neat example where you have 2 apps, one for the iPhone, another for the iPad, and you can pair them up and play a game of darts. So with the phone you can swing the phone to throw the darts onto the dartboard on your iPad, and it can sense that a dart has moved out of your phone to the dartboard. So it's a neat application, but just highlights that you can create complementary experiences with multi-device. Now these are things just to think about. When we have opportunity, we could possibly leverage some of these different types of multi-device experiences and not rely only on the continuous one, which is quite simply the default one. The second point about the multi-device world is really the context is the real king now. When we're talking of multi-device, smaller devices are going to be in the play, and when somebody is accessing information on smaller device, it is more about just-in-time in the learning training domain, more about performance support. So you're just trying to get things done rather than or learn a whole chapter or other things. So in that situation, accessibility probably even trumps design. And what I mean by that is the design that we know of, which is visual design and let's say the shiny thing within the e-learning, making it look very good. But the design over here would be about making it accessible itself, how to just ensure that this thing works rather than looks beautiful. From that perspective, accessibility would really trump design. A couple of examples here. This is a pretty well documented example of uh, helping pregnant ladies or young mothers, or who just delivered a baby. For some months after that, they could get help on their mobile phones through text messages. And here you are essentially getting reminders and notifications. You just sign up and give the age of your baby, or the due date, whatever the case may be, and based on that you get all the information just on SMS. So there is, the leveraging here is of the device, how you can use it, what you can do with that, and essentially delivering what you need, quite literally here. Another example, which is from a corporate situation that Telenor has used, this is from their own presentation on SlideShare, where they have used SMSs to have multiple choice questions in a program, and then embedded links and videos within that to really enrich the program, but the core is still SMS. So just to highlight that point again, that when it comes to multi-device, and if mobile is going to be the primary device that you're going to use it on, it would probably be more performance support than learning, and hence we need to focus more on accessibility than on design. I mean, that's just our thought of that. So those are two key points about the multi-device world itself. Let's also look at what the research tells us about engagement in learning in the corporate space. And this we've picked up from the New Learning Agenda by Towards Maturity. This is a November 2013 report. And what they found was about 44% learners don't wish to engage with online learning. And when they were asked why, they gave several reasons, and the top three were, the topmost was uninspiring content, the next one was lack of somewhere appropriate to study, and can't find what they need. So of course there are more reasons, and not too far away in terms of percentages either. So these are all important reasons, and L&D should do something about all of these reasons. But today for our session we'll be focusing on just the first one, which is what can we do to the content itself so that we can create more engagement. So again, if you have any thoughts which you would like to share with us in the chat window, please do, about what really can be done. Maybe just extending Robert's previous thought about linear, if you could possibly free that up a bit, that could help. Let them choose where they want to go, etc. Any other thoughts that you would want to probably share here on what can be done to make it more engaging? So we'll give it another minute to just see if anybody is saying. So Hank says, I can't really read the first word, but try something new and exiting with a game. All right. Okay. Okay. So probably Hank means have possibly a game kind of an assessment. watching video and personalized. That's from Robert. Uh, yeah, I think video is an excellent opportunity, if I can say so. And interestingly, we have it covered today, so we'll talk about that a bit. Smaller chunks, more interactive, based on need, request of learner. Oh, that combines a lot of things, Martha, and all of them absolutely spot on, especially when it comes to multiple device. Fantastic. So thanks for sharing your thoughts. Let's see what we have lined up for you. Hopefully there is a little bit of overlap with what you've been already thinking, and we can add a little bit to that. So there are three things that we're going to really look at today. Uh, uh, Purpose, motivation, and interactivity. And let's jump straight away into the first one, which is the purpose of your course. And as I said, we are really looking at the corporate learning scenario, where I really don't think there could be any other purpose but to change behavior. Even if it is, some information which you just want employees to remember or staff to know, there is ultimately a linked objective that they would be using that information in some way. So unless it is really just a first induction program where you want to give some information, but beyond that, even in induction, you'll have a lot of information which they have to use later on. But for most of the corporate training, you would really have some sort of behavior change that you should be really looking at. And how to go about doing that is really the challenge that we find most times that's faced. And how that can be really resolved is through something that we really love, is action mapping, which has been given by Kathy Moore. And this is an example that we picked up from her website, and you may want to go to her website and look for even more information about action mapping. But here's how it goes. So assume that you have a goal, a measurable goal in terms of increasing widget sales by, say, 10% in the next year. So you have a fairly measurable goal. What you need to identify is what job behavior or behaviors do your staff need to exhibit so that they can reach this goal. So you identified where they are not doing well, what is it that they need to know, do, etc. Essentially behaviors, but so all of them are really doing. What should they be able to do? For each of those behaviors, what is the activity, practice activity that you can give them so that they can really perform those behaviors or exhibit those behaviors in a risk-free environment. So for each of those behaviors, you'll have those activities. And then for each of those activities, you'll have the necessary essential information that you want to share with them so that they are equipped enough to be able to practice those activities and then eventually exhibit those behaviors. So to me, all of these information and activity chunks really become your training program. And if the activity can be done in a digital medium, that is through e-learning, it can be part of e-learning, or it can be part of a blended program where just the information is given out in e-learning, and the rest is really done in an offline mode. But that's really depending on the course that you're creating. But effectively what this is doing is giving you a simple way of identifying what you want to include in a program and why. And you have a very solid reason for doing that. And once you do that, you are on a very strong starting point in creating a more engaging program, because your learners will immediately identify with what they're going to do in that program and why. The second part, which is motivation, I think there's no argument about that motivation is crucial. Without that, we would really not do anything. And there's a fantastic quote by Ethan Edwards from LN Interactions. I think he's the head of instructional design there, or learning design. And he says, e-learning is an isolated activity, so motivation, which is crucial, needs to come from either the learner or from instructional design. And I think we all know it well enough that if it was to come from the learner, they would have already learned it. I mean, the fact is that most of the information, if it is external, it is available on internet. If it is internal, it would be available in some form on the intranet. I mean, there would be organizations where it may not be entirely true, but mostly these days you would find most of that information available in some form. And if somebody is really motivated, they would make efforts to really talk to colleagues or find out other things, case studies, whatever, but they would really go ahead and do it. I think a safer assumption is that that motivation has to come from instructional design, that is from our programs. How do we go about doing that? So there are a few steps that we've listed that we possibly need to take care of and that will ensure motivation in your programs. The first one is what's in it for me. As adult learners, I think this is the first thing that needs to be addressed. If we don't address this, however good the program is, however well it has been made, however amount of money you've spent on it, it doesn't really matter, because for the learner, unless he or she is satisfied that there is something for them in the program, they will not even touch it. So probably this is going to come even before they get into the program, maybe in your rollout media, maybe in the emailers that you send, maybe if you have posters that you put up for new programs, if you have banners that you put on your LMS, etc., whatever, whichever way you send the information out for new programs or programs, I think that needs to be addressed there. It can be repeated again when you get into the program, but yes, this is something that needs to be addressed, and there's no way that we can skip this. A good example for me, from my personal life has been this. I reached this video, which is on olecranon brucitis, which is a condition you have in an elbow which makes it look like a poppy elbow, and it happens to people who play tennis. So if by excessive serving, you may have this sort of an ailment because of rubbing of skin with internal tissues, etc. So I had this, and I kind of searched the web, eventually reached a video which was matching with exact symptoms, showing me what could have gone wrong and what do I need to do. I just lied low for a couple of weeks and it settled down and just worked perfectly for me. So because I was motivated, it was so easy for me to find this, and really it solved my problem. And that's how most of us work in our real lives and possibly want to work in our professional lives as well. When we are stuck, when we want to do something, what we want to know, what we want to find, we'll go and find. So if that part is addressed, if that what's in it for me is addressed in e-learning programs as well, I think we'll have a more ready audience to really come to that, and that itself will create much higher engagement. We need to recognize that our audience is really one that has got some job to do. They're not really coming to an organization to just learn. Learning is probably something which they want to do to achieve what they have to do as a task. So we need to recognize they're busy, they may have other things to do. So we need to make it purposeful, conversational, and not very didactic as if we are teaching students. So, here's a good example of, how we kind of almost made it a one-screen introduction with all the, the message about what this course is about just in one corner. The preferred path is at the top, and then the navigation is really free. You can go to whichever section you want to. And that makes it look very purposeful, makes it easy, even before the learner, as you can imagine, in a program which is starting off with, welcome to this program on XYZ, and the next screen says, here are the objectives, and the next screen says, it has been broken down into 4 modules, and the next screen says, here is the help, etc. I think the learners, you've already lost your learner by the 4th, 5th screen while you're introducing the program. So as soon as we could get out of that and get into the meat of it, I think learners really prefer that. They obviously feel that they are being respected as adult learners rather than school-going children. Keep it bite-sized and searchable. This was one of the suggestions that also came up. Of course, if you're looking at mobile devices, as we talked about earlier, it is probably going to be performance support or just-in-time access. And if that is the case, your staff would want to quickly reach that particular chunk of information, so it needs to be searchable. And the information itself should be chunked to such a a fine level that they can get over with that in probably less than 5 minutes if you're looking at uh, mobile devices to be the primary modes of access of that content. A good example here is something that we did for WooCollect, which is part of Honeywell, and in US they are into voice-enabled warehousing solutions. So for their warehouse staff, uh, we had these chunks of 2-3 minute chunks of information on each of their products, which could be accessed through their LMS, searched through the LMS, and accessed on their iPads. So wherever they are on the workshop, they could simply access that. As you can see, there is no other navigation except for the 3 videos, 1, 2, 3, that are there in this. And each of them is a video. It just plays, and you could finish that in about 3 minutes. Again, I think we are definitely of the view that we need to free up the navigation and not lock it down, or I mean, definitely not just ensure that it is linear, and more so in some cases we found that we even lock it down. So the more you try and lock it down, the more frustrated your learners become. Excuse me. Here's a good example. We just covered the name of the client here because we didn't want to show that, but it's really open. You could go to any of those sections which you want to. There's another example where this is really the introduction screen and the objective screen and the navigation screen for you. So in quick, less than 30 seconds, it just gets into the program and tells you pick up one of the scenarios and go. Of course, if you are looking at multi-device, we need to consciously build it for multi-device, and our preference is really make it mobile first, because that kind of forces us to focus on the core things that you want to do and how people will access it on mobile phones. We can add other stuff if we want based on the area that is available for larger devices, etc. But essentially the design should start for mobile devices. Responsive e-learning is obviously a good solution to that. Here are a couple of examples of different types of responsive courses that can be created. But here, in each of these, the focus is that on a mobile phone it should work very well. And so the design probably comes from the mobile and then expands to the other, and gives you more of the image, which may not be so crucial. Again, from the same example that we had earlier, that is available on all devices as well. One crucial thing about such responsive programs is that sometimes we found confusion between scalable versus responsive. So responsive is when it kind of realigns itself on the screen without making it harder for you to read on a smaller device, and you don't have to pinch and zoom on a smaller device. So it has to realign itself, and that's the primary thing. So if you notice in this screen, there's the navigation which was proposed has arrows from left to right. On this screen, on the mobile phone, the navigation is from top to bottom, just to adjust for the screen size, etc. Okay, another question for you, which is just before we get into our third point, which is on interactivity. How do you measure interactivity? And there may be different ways to really understand this, but let's see what comes up, and if I have to answer any questions on that, I can. Questions and answers. Okay. So maybe the idea here is trying to understand, or maybe just to put it differently, how do you measure the levels of programs? There's a common way to really call for cost based on level 1, level 2, level 3, and our understanding is more often than not a higher level means higher interactivity. All right, so this is actually a slightly offbeat one, but let's see what we mean by this. What we're really trying to come to is challenge this notion of interactivity or higher level course, which is obviously built with higher end level of interactivity, is going to be better, and possibly we are also believing somewhere that it is also going to be more engaging. But that's not true. Interactivity is really not engagement unless you make it meaningful, and that too, I think there's a slight difference between what we call interactivity. And if we look at that, just look at this example, which is absolutely non-interactive but probably very engaging. And this kind of highlights the point that we're trying to make here, that interactivity itself, at least as we know it, will not make for an engaging course, or non-interactivity will not mean it is an engaging course. So maybe the interactivity that we should be looking at or for is interactivity or interactions with the head or the mind rather than with the hand of your learners. Most of the interactivity that we create, and maybe it's a bigger generalization, but more often than not, let's say, we create interactivities which are more for the hand than for the head. And this example definitely has various things inside which interacts with your head rather than with just the hand. So I think that's a crucial difference, that we cannot and we should not look at interactivity as the real substitute or the means to reach engagement. Meaningful interactions, absolutely yes. If you can create meaningful interactions, they would do a lot of good in increasing engagement level in your programs. How do you do that? So we believe if you can give real scenario or context for your learners to work with in that program and do something which is closer to their real jobs, and provide elaborate feedback. A combination of these three should give you good, meaningful interactions. And in a way, these also sum up to a well-created simulation or even a game, because these will still be the starting point or the basic principles that would be covered in a game as well. But unless we do that, most of the interactions will be superficial. And the last point is probably even more important here, and that gets overlooked, is that providing elaborate feedback. Many times we find that feedback is, oh, that was wrong, please try again. Oh, that was wrong again, please try one more time, etc. And that does not really do any good, because once you give that kind of feedback, maybe the learner is even not looking at it. So I think it's an opportunity which is wasted, because whenever something goes wrong or right, it is a point where the learner might be interested in knowing why. And that's the time where you can really support them and they're eager to learn, and that's when most of the information will really register. So we should take those opportunities in providing elaborate feedback wherever possible. An example from our, from the next screen of previous example that I had shared, here you have a realistic scenario. You have things to do. You have to make choices. You have more than what is there on the screen. So you have these additional items that you can choose. So you have to think beyond just these, and it is not just that you click on these and and the thing is solved. And also then just to add an element of, maybe time pressure, you have time and score this thing. So this small element of game, which doesn't really make it a game, but it has some game elements in that. Another example is this, which is, excuse me, for learning English, this was done for British Council, and this is really, you are getting into the scenario where you have a video playing out to you and then you respond by recording your voice, and you are able to play that back and compare it with what should have been the ideal response or the tone, etc. So that's immediate feedback that you get, and you're doing exactly what you would be doing in a real situation. I think that's a great example of what we are just talking about. Apart from building some of those meaningful interactions, you could also look at alternatives or combining these with the meaningful interactions in terms of storytelling, and that could form, obviously we all love stories from our childhood. We've kind of been fed on so many stories, and we remember so much more from stories. We are definitely more interested and receptive to those stories as well. Again, an example here we have is where we've used a story just to introduce the program, and then which is about the story of the wheel, how it was developed, how it evolved through the ages, and then how the product that we are going to talk about in this program, the cycle is probably the same, and where we are today, etc., etc. So it gives some sort of a benchmark or a baseline for learners, one that they can remember, and then they can fit new information on. Videos. We did talk about videos earlier being an interesting opportunity. We do believe that, first of all, videos are great on all devices. They are naturally responsive. So you can have a video which plays on full screen on a desktop or even larger screen, 25, 27-inch screens, and they can play on a 5-inch screen equally well. If there is no text written in those videos which needs to be read out on a smaller device, I think they work absolutely fine on all devices. So that's one great aspect of videos, naturally responsive. And interactive videos have great potential, so because videos by very nature pull you in, of course if it's been shot very badly, people may not just get in, but typically videos pack in so much information and it engages so many of our senses together, we are naturally attracted towards videos. And it is not surprising that before we moved to web-based learning, most of the training was actually videos through the VHS players, etc. Or but videos are really special. Now I think we are coming full circle where videos can be shot easily. The cost is much lesser. Editing is easier. You could upload it. The bandwidths have improved, and interactivity options are available. So videos are a great option. We will see more and more of videos coming into play in e-learning, and they can lend a huge hand in making e-learning engaging. I have a couple of videos that I wanted to play out for you. So this is more of a situation video where you could use that to maybe set the stage. You can use it in quizzes, but they are so engaging because you're not writing a lot of stuff. You're not forcing the learners to think about that. And they feel in the situation, and then they can respond to queries, or they can you can create a scenario out of it where you can say, now what will you do, and then another video can play, etc., etc. You can do so many things with those videos. There's another one which is slightly simpler. I'll just increase the size. But this is meant for mobile phones.
Before beginning any sort of cleaning, ensure that you put on the correct personal protective equipment required for the task. Begin by placing safety signs around the work area. Apply the undiluted cleaner to the urinal.
So here what is interesting is these videos, which we really call them as how-to videos, are essentially helping the cleaning staff do their job. And what is very interesting about this whole setup is that these videos can be launched by scanning the QR code on the bottle of the cleaner. So the cleaning agent has a QR code on it. With your mobile phone, you can scan that and launch the video, which tells you exactly how to use that particular cleaning agent. So logistically, it's just so simple for anybody who wants to use it. And in less than a minute or two, in some cases, you would really know how to use that particular cleaning agent. And the need was really because they had more than 100 different agents. Sometimes people get confused, they change departments, so they've been using something else, or they were in cleaning of certain different portions of a building or whatever. So they just kind of substitute for each other as well. But how-to videos could be excellent. I think we've all been using those how-to videos. I mean, sometime or the other we've been to YouTube to look for something which has not been working. Maybe our phone is not, showing internet connection. We don't know how to do this. We don't know how to do that in the house, etc. And we all have been learning from YouTube videos, and some of those videos are 1 minute, some of those videos could be 10 minutes, 20 minutes. But we know that, it is something that we all realize that the potential of such videos is huge. And in performance support, just-in-time learning, these could be really fantastic. This video, which is, we've not done this, but you may want to take a look at this if you haven't already. It's a great example of how, a scenario-based video can be built, and you can have some sort of game elements in that in terms of you get points for doing things right, etc. But again, it's a fantastic example of what videos can be used for in terms of creating engaging e-learning. This, by the way, was an award winner at eLearning Age Awards, I think 2 years ago. So that's really all from our side today. We'll just quickly recap on the 3 things that we were trying to focus on. Purpose, it has to be behavior change, and action mapping by Kathy Moore is a great way to do that. Motivation is crucial. There are several elements that we listed that need to be taken care of. What's in it for me, to me, is probably the most important. And interactivity is definitely not engagement. There are other ways as well, not just interactivity, but within interactivity also, it will help only if we can make it meaningful. So that's really all from our side. Thank you very much for your time. I'm happy to take any questions that you may have. We've of course ended this a little early. We have good 10-15 minutes for any questions. Here we have the first one. How the content is going to look on a mobile phone. So Linga, who's asked this question, Linga, we did show a few examples. Depends on what you are really trying to present on those mobile phones. But if I can take you back to some of those examples that we showed, if you're creating responsive e-learning, the content that was appearing on desktop like this, it kind of lays itself slightly differently on a mobile phone, as you can see, and you can possibly do away with some of the non-essential elements, but definitely ensure that it is readable, it is workable, and it does not give you a bad experience. But of course, with mobile, our primary recommendation is let's not do a module which is more than 10 minutes ever. 5 minutes is just ideal. Another question from Linga, which is whether it should be adaptive or responsive. So Linga, adaptive, essentially technical terms, but adaptive is certainly a possibility if you know the devices that you want it to work on. What responsive does beyond adaptive is just ensures that you can make it work on many different types of devices without bothering for newer types of devices that will come into the mix. So adaptive would limit you a bit, but if you have, let's say, company sponsored devices and you are targeting only specific type of devices, that should work. Another technical question from Linga, which is, can we successfully integrate audio sync and animation to content? I believe you're asking for responsive e-learning, Linga, and that is now going to be possible. And when I say now, we are experimenting now with Animate CC, which is Adobe's product. So essentially, Flash has been renamed Animate CC just a couple of months ago. It has the capability of allowing us to sync audio. We're still playing with that. In our view, it has potential, but we can't really say it does exactly what Flash was able to do earlier. So in HTML, we still may have some issues, but from our perspective, I think it is probably the best solution so far. But still, we are kind of still working with it, and before we are happy ourselves, we'll not want to say anything about that. So pause and play may not be possible in HTML. All right, if there are no other questions, we'll end this. Thank you once again. You all have a good day. Thank you. Bye-bye.